Good afternoon, friends. A big hello and a warm welcome to all you lovely people on behalf of Asia One Magazine and URS International Media. Friends, I'm Sangeeta Singh, and I only hope and pray that all of you are home, indoors, safe, and above all, in a great state of mind. Friends, will I say that I know there is a sense of panic that is evident. There are too many thoughts, too many worries that have clouded our minds. Thoughts like what is going to happen after the lockdown, how life is going to be, how business is going to happen, how the economy is going to be. Too many things, right? Isn't it? And that is where Asia One, in its endeavor, ladies and gentlemen, is trying to connect with global leaders and stalwarts with this particular digital platform, Web Talks. Yes, now in its series 4. Friends, you must have seen, you must have witnessed that we have these wonderful, eminent personalities, leaders who deliberate and who discuss some very wisely chosen topic. And yet again today, we have a very pertinent topic, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, today we talk about business have resources to do collective good. All of us have understood capitalism. We have understood the models of capitalism. At least that I have grown in. I know for sure that there are 3 G's of growth. We talk about consistency, we talk about competitiveness, and we talk about profitability. But then I guess with this global crisis, there is a lot that needs to be changed. There has to be another G that needs to be added, and that is the G of responsibility. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, those companies who are actually able to embrace this particular G of responsibility will be the companies of tomorrow. I am guessing that values and absolute purpose is going to be the software driver for these wonderful companies to kind of survive in the near future. We have created great businesses. Now it is time for all of us together to create great environment. So let's delve deeper into the minds of our eminent panelists who are here with me. It's an honor and pleasure to introduce them to all of you right there. Once again, a big hello to everybody. Friends, we are honored to have here amongst us Dr. Batra, Padma Shri recipient, homeopathy. And yes, he's also the founder of Dr. Batra's group of companies. A very warm welcome, sir. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Wonderful to be here and to spend this afternoon with you all. Thank you.
I welcome you to Web Talk Series 4, sir. Thank you so much. We also have here with us His Excellency Professor Dr. Krinchak, Consul General of Zimbabwe, to Kingdom of Thailand, and Chairman, Success Group of Companies, Thailand. It's wonderful to have you here with us, sir.
Yes, it's my pleasure too. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. We're also joined by Mr. Rajat Shukl, Global Head and Principal Partner, Asia One Magazine. A warm and hearty welcome, sir. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Sangeeta, and I welcome all the speakers today. It's a privilege to have all of them here today, and it's a privilege to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. We're also joined by Mr. Manwar Hussain, Chairman, Anwar Group of Industries. A very warm and hearty welcome, sir.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Just a little correction. I'm not the chairman of the group. I'm the managing director of the group. My father is the chairman of the group.
Sorry, sir. So we have our managing director, Anwar Group of Industries, Mr. Manwar Hussain.
Thank you so much.
And it was lovely chatting you before we actually got started with this session formally. You're wonderful. I'm really looking forward for a great conversation with you.
Me too.
We're also joined by Ms. Shaina Ganpati, Head Community Outreach, Embassy Group. A very warm welcome, ma'am. You look lovely today.
Thanks, Sangeeta. It's a pleasure to be with all of you.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. T.V. Manjunath, CEO, BSCPL Infrastructure Limited. Thank you so much for joining us here, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. Thanks to be here.
So with that, before I start with Web Talk Series 4, like always, I'd love Brother Sir to open. I would want, you can see that our Asia One Magazine family, our digital family, our virtual family has now grown. It is growing. Our last series actually crossed almost 4,000 plus viewership. So, sir, what is that you have to say on that before I actually? introduction.
Sorry, Sangeeta, little disturbance. I couldn't hear you.
I'm saying,
You-
sir, I
the
mean,
last
we
part,
are now,
sorry.
we are all set with our Web Talk Series 4. So, last series was amazing. We had
Yes.
a great time with Ms. Usha also. We had a blast. We had a wonderful time with her. So before we get started and we bring on our panelists, I'd like you to say a few words to all, our viewers out there, our growing family of Asia One.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Once again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And it's a pleasure to have all of you here. This entire pandemic is going to bring in a huge transformation in multiple industries, I would say. And for us, being a print media product, consciously we are thinking of shifting to digital. That's the reason we're getting a lot of you to come here and talk, and so that our readers could benefit. At a time we're unable to send out our hard copy assets to them, and it's brilliant to have some of my mentors here. Mukesh Batra ji, he's a Padma Shri. I feel he's the person who's organized homeopathy in such a large country as India. And not only India, now with presence in 4 countries. And Mukesh ji, I keep following your model of expansion. I know you might not know about it, but I've been following it. And it's nice to see how Akshay, your son, is doing so well as well.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you, sir, here
Thank
today.
you very much.
And the real estate groups we have today, BSPL and Embassy, and Manwar Hussain ji, Bangladesh is one of the fastest growing economies in Asia. I must say that. We're happy to be instrumental in talking a lot about Bangladesh entrepreneurs and how you are creating excellence. And honestly, I grew up reading a lot of international magazines, and I was always skeptical that they don't talk much about the Asian leaders. So we're happy as Asia One to bring out the vision and the entrepreneurship of the Asian and Indian and multiple leaders of Asia and take it to the rest of the world. Dr. Pranjak is also here. It's a pleasure to have you. You're a scholar, you're a politician, you've done it all. And I follow you as well on social media. I view a lot of your videos, and it's very important what you talk about business and strategy. And it's a pleasure to be here and be able to hear you today.
Thank you.
I think Sangeeta, thank you, sir. And Sangeeta, I think a couple
Thank
of more
you.
speakers will join us
Yes. As and when
throughout
they
the
join
afternoon
us.
as well, right?
Yes, as and when they
Yeah.
join us, I'm going to bring them on board, sir.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for once again introducing this wonderful panel for all of us, and letting us know a little more about all of these wonderful personalities that we have here with us. I would love to get started with Dr. Batra. Sir, it's once again, I must say, and every time I say, I really think that I can continue to say this, that it is really lovely. It's really amazing to have you here with us. We're really looking at a lot of knowledge and insights from you. To begin with, yes, my question to you would be that, you are actually a brand on your own, and you represent the health and wellness sector, not only in India, but globally. And in fact, that actually gives you a great responsibility to contribute to the narrative right now. You've been actively educating people about staying fit, increasing immunity, and so on. We need to understand through your mind, through your views, that how is your brand influencing people in the current scenario?
So thank you, Sangeeta, for all your wonderful words. And now I have to live up to it, which is really the difficult part. So, let me just start by saying that, yes, it is a difficult time for all of us. And not every profession, every business is actually going through this. And we have to come out of it. We have to see the light at the end of the tunnel and, make it happen. And, be around to fight another day. So today it's all about survival as well. Let me tell you about what Dr. Batra is doing as being part of the health and wellness industry at a time like this. So we've looked at it in two ways. First of all, I think that corporates are in a position to actually give more than any individual. Now, this is either because they have financial reserves. Not all companies have it. Some of the smaller companies don't. But if they have it, they can then give more, to society in whatever way they found, whether it's checkbook charity or it's actually doing charity events as well, reaching out to people. And the other thing is that they have much more HR with them. They have a stronger organization as well to reach out to people. So what we've done is, at a time like this, we try to leverage that. So we've divided our reach in two ways. The first way is experientially, and the second is educationally. So in terms of experience, what we've done is we've actually distributed 60,000 free doses of preventive homeopathic medicine through all our clinics across India. So, we are in 133 cities in India, and we are in, 6 countries in the world. But in India, we have this preventive medicine, Arsenicel, has been kind of promoted and recommended and researched by the Ayush Ministry. So because we have the reach, because we have 200 clinics, because we are in 130 cities, because we have 400 doctors in India, we thought that we should use our reach to distribute this and also pay for it, to whatever extent we could. So that's the experiential part. So we want people to experience the brand. We want them to take the prophylactic, and we reached out to them, and we've tried to do our best over there. The second part at a time like this is, there's so much of, if I may say, more than doctors, is Dr. WhatsApp that's floating all over. There's so much of misinformation that is floating all over. There's so much of knowledge which is not really true knowledge, which is going all over. And it's actually making people panic more. It's actually making people more disturbed.
It's like a WhatsApp university that has been created now.
I'm saying it's just that all news is not good news, and especially at a time like this, because somewhere you hear who's dying and what's happening all over the world. So I think to overcome that, we thought that we must do something educational. So what we've done in our company is that every Friday at 5 o'clock, I have a kind of an interview on some aspect of this thing, either on Instagram or on Facebook. Mm-hmm. We've already crossed more than 5 lakh viewers on any one program that we do like this. We had a program with Mandira Bedi on how she keeps fit. We've had a program with a top psychiatrist on how to deal with mental health and homeopathy as well. Mm-hmm. And we are now doing one this week on Friday with a top chef, Varun Inamdar, who's a Guinness Report World Order, on how to build immunity through food. So, every week we come out with something like this which we can communicate with people. I think at a time like this, it's very important to communicate, and it's very important to have the right kind of communication, to your internal staff, to your own people, as well as to your customers and to your people outside. So that's really what we are doing in a very small way, building kind of happy ecosystems, if I may say so, and trying to spread prevention, which we believe is better than cure.
Wow, it was lovely hearing all the endeavors that that you've already kind of adopted to him, and you're actually going and implementing it. Sir, when I asked you this, I also need to understand, like you rightly said, that you are reaching out to people, and the right kind of communication is important. And when it comes to the corporates, the bigger businesses, like you said, they have those resources. You think it is important at this point in time that a conscious effort has to be made? I mean, we have the CSR, we have the corporate social responsibility, but it is a little more than doing the charity. More of strategy is needed to do it rightly.
I think it's very important, and it's very important to do it in an organized manner. There are so many small charities happening all over. It's a corporate who can actually do it in an organized manner with the kind of strength that they have. Let me tell you this, that I'm now 70 years old, and when I was 50 years old, I started a Dr. Batra Foundation. And from that time onwards, we've been having CSR as a brand. We've been reaching out to people. We are running 130 free clinics in India. Any patient can go on the first Wednesday of any month, walk into any of our clinics and take lifelong free treatment.
Like kind of a deep network.
Yes. Right now we're going through e-consults, through telemedicine as well. But so I think every corporate, if it really wants to build a brand, it actually has to build the soft power. The soft power doesn't come from advertising.
Absolutely.
It comes from actually doing good to people. It comes from the CSR activity that we're doing. So what I'm trying to tell you is that much before CSR became compulsory in India, for the last 20 years, we've been doing it as part of our company philosophy. And our company philosophy is very clear. I mean, we want to create wealth to share wealth. So that's the passion. So if we are driving change, if we are driving growth, we are driving growth so that the more money we have, the more we can share with people. Because whatever we do is not enough.
Right, sir. So actually kind of bringing it into our own conscience, that is more important. And I think Dr. Batra's Healthcare has always been doing this. So that's amazing. That's commendable. Thank you so much. So, I would want to, you said that there were too many these Insta lives and Facebook lives that you're doing. And so all our viewers out here, could you, they're also watching us on Facebook. We want to understand that if we have to reach out to your programs and, your Insta lives, where do we kind of look for?
So you get onto our Insta handle or our Facebook handle, and that's Dr. Batra's Healthcare.
Dr. Batra's Healthcare.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that'll keep us updated on everything that's happening.
Certainly.
Thank you so much. And I'm surely going to come back to you. And with that, I want to bring on our next speaker, Dr. Krinchak here. Sir, well, I just want to know how's everything back in Thailand before I put the question to you?
Let me just paint you a picture. The government reacts quite strongly to this COVID pandemic and have locked down the country substantially very early on.
I'd just like to interrupt. We cannot see you, so if you could just hold your camera a little away. Yes. Now, yes, perfect. Okay. This is fine, sir. Sorry for that.
Right. Just want to paint you the picture of how we react to COVID here in Thailand. Basically, we have taken this issue seriously from the beginning. And there was a real effort in the war room atmosphere of the cabinet, also specialists who are being recruited to help. And the government had made decision very, very stringent early on to keep the people in social distancing, get rid of all the social gathering that in large number, lock down substantially the country and also the various towns, and make people stay home largely so that we can spend time detecting who got the virus, and we can put them through the process, either treatment and cure them, or trying to make sure that the pandemic do not continue in a spreading by super spreader. And it has been paying the good results. Thailand was one of the very first country that saw this phenomenon after China, but we have kept the numbers so low in terms of infection and also deaths that now there's so many other scores of countries that have surpassed Thailand in number of COVID infection and death even. So therefore Thailand managed quite well in the term health-wise in protecting the people, and now the last couple of days we have very little infection. In fact, I think we had maybe 9 people yesterday that get infected, and the number that has been infected has gone through the process and become well has almost been total. We only have a few hundred cases left being treated in the hospital. The death number, we have only maybe 50 people thus far. So Thailand is handling quite well in that sense.
So I think it's the preemptive measures that have been taken timely that have resulted into something so amazing, containing the disease. Like you said, just about in terms of the rise, it has been quite less. The numbers that we are seeing, people who are testing positive, has been quite less. With that, His Excellency, my question to you would be that in regard to the ongoing global crisis, what do you think, according to you, will be the significant policy changes in the international relations in the near future?
I will analyze you. I have been giving lectures to our own people in Thailand for the last many weeks, even including yesterday. And one of the issues that we're handling is this very issue of what will happen international-wise in international relation in the light of COVID and pandemic. I can see a few things. Let me name a few things. One, there will be an increased level of protectionism in the world economy and stronger nationalism. You can see that happened already before pre-COVID time, when the superpower, the US, Donald Trump, who declared America first and has really caused a huge amount of trade war that going on pre-COVID. Now with COVID, the strength of this protectionism has increased, and therefore the people in time of concern and worry that things cannot be under control, they turn to their own country because the sovereign power of the country is stronger than international relation. Therefore, they turn to the government and give the government a lot more power and leeway. Therefore, protectionism economically is happening, nationalism is happening, and you see more countries trying to depend on themselves a lot more so that they can buy their own product, because the export is already been dwindling down due to this issue, and hence protection measures are being put up, and the countries that have some large agricultural base for food security, that would be less problem, particularly countries that have their own production, but countries that have been totally industrialized a lot more and that depend heavily on other food export, we have bigger problems. So the issue of food security will come on into the world soon. And now protectionism is happening, and you can see that since the Great Depression in about 91 years ago, we have never seen anything as severe as we have today. And you'll see that in every time when there is some economic recession, depression to that level, you see countries turn to be more protective of themselves. You see tariffs being put up into various products, and this will be what will happen from now on. Trade war will escalate because everyone will retaliate, and therefore the global supply chain will be very much disrupted. We can see that the global supply chain that has been functioning quite smoothly around the world pre-COVID, pre-Trump syndrome, now has been damaged very heavily.
So we will have the pre-COVID and the post-COVID era, I guess now.
Sorry?
I said we will see a pre-COVID and a post-COVID era.
Yes, we will. Pre-COVID is already have economic recession in the world, and also you see increasing level of protectionism due to Trump policies that has set the way, being the first biggest economic power of the world. Now post-COVID is worse because it's aggravated the problem stronger. I would say protectionism will be stronger and turn inward. Many countries will be more. The global supply chain is no longer can be trusted because you cannot link up the entire world as before. Therefore, I think it will turn more and more towards national supply chain or regional supply chain,
more
local supply chain. Sorry?
More self-dependent. Countries will start looking inwards.
It will start looking inward, more self-reliance, and therefore I would say, I will predict that the global supply chain in some measure will decrease, the national supply chain will increase, and the local supply chain will increase, and regional supply chain too. Therefore, I think that's the main issue that I can see. The second issue I would see, the issue of reindustrialization. I can see that the entire world has shifted, particularly the world that is well off, have shifted more heavily towards service industry, the service sector, and less so for the industrial sector and the agricultural sectors. You can see the pattern of countries that are getting well developed towards a first world status have very huge service sector, a much smaller industrial sector, and a much smaller for the agricultural sector. But I think this COVID situation will turn the situation a little bit change in terms of the service sector will dwindle down slightly, and it will shift the people over and the capital over to the industrial sector. So we can call this reindustrialization post-COVID. Therefore, basically, I would see that the reindustrialization will happen to solve the unemployment problem, to also self-dependent a lot more so that they don't lack supply that come from other countries. And therefore, this issue of shifting internally between industrial service interface will shift back towards more industrialization of the country than before. That would be the second issue I can see. Let me name the last issue the main issue that I can see is economic decoupling. I think this is going to happen because the East and the West are confronting each other very heavily before, but much more so after COVID. With the leadership of US, that is, or the lack of leadership of US and the leadership of China, the unwilling leadership of China. So the two of them, now the problem is happening is this really clear, that the US leadership have dwindled down very badly under Trump leadership. Post-COVID will be worse because Trump have forsaken the international arenas largely for American interests, and therefore Trump have usually traditionally under presidencies of US prior to Trump, say Obama and all the presidents previously, they all consult the European unions, they consult the European countries. The cross-Atlantic alliance have been very strong before Trump time. Now Trump has paid no attention to the Europeans, and the Europeans are really soul searching to see whether their traditional allies like US could be relied upon. So that is in the doldrum. You can see the situation with EU, with Brexit, that have precedes all these things. Now Italy have bring down the flag of the EU and put up the flag of China, because during COVID time, they felt that the EU have not consolidated their relationship, did not help one another. They all for their own. They all depend on themselves, national dependency. Hence, you can see the next one would come along. Possibly, it would be Italian exit from the entire economic EU sphere. It could be. It may not. It may depend on China, how China act towards Italy after this issue. So you can see Italy as under a lot of strain economically before the COVID. For the last few years, you can see many European countries, the big one, in trouble. The Italian, the Spanish, and the French. All these are big countries, except the German that are stronger. But German under COVID also have faced severe problem and cannot shoulder the responsibility for EU like before. Now with Italian in trouble, Greece already in trouble way before. You have Italian problem, you have French problem, you have Spanish problem, all of them in trouble. So therefore, EU is in the doldrum. I don't know what will happen to EU, where they're going to land in this equation. The US obviously forsaking the world, forsaking the European, forsaking everybody. Yet they are the first superpower economically, and everyone have depend on because they have still trade relationship and investment relationship with US heavily. So that's one block. The Western bloc, which is in disarray with no leadership, the unwilling leadership of US make the Western bloc in trouble. The Western bloc now have shrink back into the US-led Western remote Western bloc, and the US is working very heavily to make Mexico and also Canada working together with US, where the US benefit a lot more than before. Therefore, the US is trying to truncate NAFTA and then create a new model for Mexico, Canada, US, so that America with the near neighbors can continue to be America first. And that's what's happening with the US-led leadership, who will pay more attention to Mexico, Canada, and in some measure, the Latin America, and forsaking Europe. So that is the situation with America. Now with China, second in command, in terms of the second superpower in the world, the rising superpower, but not yet arriving, still behind US in terms of size of economic. And hence, China is assuming leadership somewhat because its own need to try to promote. Pre-COVID, they promote the Belt and Road Initiative and has tried to expand the influence over into many countries in Asia, in Europe, and in Africa. So China no longer in the position to be able to do that fiscally and financially because China is being affected heavily by COVID, and therefore its economy will will not resume back to its normal level. Given this situation, China can be the reluctant leaders of this polarity, because China is not in the shape to be able to do that like before. Even if aspire to be in leadership, China cannot in the short run. Therefore, China is being pushed into leadership in the absence of U.S. Leadership. China is being pushed into it by way of its relationship economically with many countries around Asia, in Southeast Asia, East Asia, and South Asia. Hence, the China economic pole would have to work together in an unfinished way. China could not function completely as leaders because it is not in a shape to do so, but it's aspired to do so in the middle term and the long term. Hence, China not yet ready, US not yet willing, and therefore the world is now being pushed into two major decoupling, East-West economic decoupling, when the leadership are not there in both. And now the world is being forced by reluctance to choose side, whether you're going to flow with the U.S. so-called US-led leadership, or you're going to flow with the Chinese-led leadership, and which both are not functioning properly yet, particularly the US not functioning. So the world is have to make a choice. They cannot go for both for too long. Now we still have our foot in two camps, but eventually situation will force us to choose side. India is another major power that is not yet there. It's still not quite there. It's a long time before it's there to assume some super leadership power, to maybe a few decades. Therefore, India is in between what to do, whether India want to join the US-led coalition or the Chinese-led coalition. India throw its weight on either side will make that side a bit stronger. I suspect India will have to make that choice in the nutshell soon, eventually. The world will develop into decoupling, no doubt. After COVID, the whole world will have to develop into this decoupling process. And every country, particularly in our region, South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, in a way will have to choose side. And even though we don't want.
Thank you, Dr. Kringshit. Thank you so much for giving us this holistic view. Thank you actually for us on this panel, decoupling the economies, talking in detail about the US, about India, about China, about the UE nations, and how we are all looking inward and how we are getting self-reliant. Thank you. It was wonderful how you actually did break down all these economies for us, elaborated and explained on each one of them. Thank you so much for those insights. And with that, I bring in Rajat sir. So Rajat sir, my question to you will be in extension to what Dr. Kringshit has spoken about. He has decoupled economies for us right here. So I need to understand, while we are all looking inwards, while we are trying to be self-reliant, self-dependent, what is the kind of narrative that the media houses will, be trying to build so that gives more benefit to the society today? And in particularly, specifically, I need to understand Asia One's vision, aligned with doing this collective good towards our own economy, towards our own country.
Okay. Thank you, Sangeeta. It's very difficult to talk after Dr. Kringshit, because he's an authority on business, policy, and economy as well.
Right.
But I'm just going to talk about my own industry. So print media industry is was actually seeing a decline throughout the world. But in countries like Asia, where literacy was still increasing, print was on an incline. And having said this, been research and never news, because we knew that being a print media company, by the time we would put information into the hands of the readers, today you get information within seconds on your mobile phone or whatever device you're using. So our entire vision was to do research, and to do research across multiple industries and multiple regions, and we have these intellectual properties where we basically had the vision where we wanted to recognize. We thought that some of the greatest brands of the world, when you actually think of the greatest brands of the world, you start thinking about the American and the European brands. And this was also happening because some of our contemporaries, the leading business media houses, Time Magazine, Fortune, Forbes, were actually only talking about American and European entrepreneurs and their brands. So, there was no really, a big distribution magazine that went ahead and started talking about the Asian brands and leaders. And Asia has been definitely the number one consumer economy for all brands from all across the world. But nobody was talking about the Indian entrepreneurs and Asian entrepreneurs. And that's where Asia One's vision was to look inwardly, create story-based features, create excellent hard copy assets which are creating history. Today, I'm happy to tell you at this platform that some of the Ivy League schools are subscribing to our magazines and coffee table books. The world is looking. And having said this, our books and magazines parallelly talk about the leaders as well behind these brands, who have their own stories. And it's very essential at this stage that I also, one more aspect is I also see that, when there are situations like a pandemic, there are readers, or I would say audiences, who are looking at information. And, there are so many channels for information today. And having said this, these channels of information might not always be correct, we're all spending a lot of time on social media. We're all spending a lot of time on digital media. But we've all seen that, this information, the way it's come out has not always been correct. And, definitely the pre-pandemic and the post-pandemic era is going to be of a lot of caution for people as well. And having said this, our contribution as Asia One is to create stories, take it to the world, talk about the Asian. That's been the vision throughout. I remember, Dr. Batra got the Padma Shri, I think around 2012, and 2014 we awarded him as the world's greatest leader, Asia GCC. And many of you who are on this platform, we've awarded through a scientific research methodology, through also having one of the big four audit companies on our side, PricewaterhouseCoopers and Deloitte, as the process advisors. So, what I essentially want to say is research and authentication, credibility needs to come in media. It should, that's the real catch. Dr. Batra was also saying, and some other speakers were also saying that, this information comes to you so negatively. So, it's not all about just giving out information. It's also giving it out in the right way. And this is what I feel the transformation also for media companies.
Because I guess all this information is more of a building block towards that particular economy, the kind of narrative that we are going to present post-COVID era.
Correct. Thank you, Sangeeta.
Sir, I'd also want to ask you, you just said that we as a magazine, we've been actually concentrating, we've been trying to create a platform for the Asian leaders, the Asian economies. And today it is so evident when we talk about the COVID, this global crisis, we are seeing that how Asian economies, Asian countries have actually emerged far more superior and, have really emerged as heroes is what I would say in comparison to other, bigger economies or maybe the US or when we're talking about the UN nations. What would you want to say on that, sir?
Absolutely. I call home to Dubai, Singapore, and India, and now my fourth home should be Thailand. And I completely agree with Dr. Kengzak as well that these 4 or 5 Asian economies have stood out. I mean, look at us. 130 billion people over just 30,000 cases, over these ratios with other countries which are much lesser populated. And, we've all stood out. And I feel the compassion has also come out, in this unfortunate time. We all as countries, as leaders, have looked after each other, on a society as a whole. And I'm happy to say, I know all of us on this platform have also been giving in our own way. And that's extremely important. I think the world has transformed on the way we look at, facing the pandemic. And we're all creating history by being part of it in the near future. But let's hope for the best.
Thank you. And I'm sure, the world is going to look towards the Asian countries and Asian economies in a very different outlook now. And with that, I'm going to bring on Mr. Hussain here with us. Sir, so from you, I need to understand that, yes, you are one of the largest conglomerates of Bangladesh. In the current scenario, how are you actually ensuring the right balance between the resources and the results? A major shift in the availability of various resources would have definitely made it all difficult for you to meet your goals. But then how are you planning to align the things now?
See, for me, for now, for the current situation, my most important resources are time, health of my people, and hope. And this is exactly what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to make the best use of these three resources in my group at this moment. Time, I keep telling my people, you have worked very hard, you have been working hard for years, you don't get off time like this. You got this time, use this time. Use this time with your family, spend time with your children, maybe with your parents. It's a time of Ramadan, spend a lot of time praying, seek your God, seek your Allah, and stay well, and their health is very important to me at this moment. When we went into the lockdown, I had made it very clear to my people that you cannot get sick. You just cannot get sick. You have to come back well. Not only you, your entire family has to stay well. And my last resource, I say, in this period is hope. I have been trying to tell my people not to worry. The world has gotten through 2 world wars. This will also pass. If I can, I'll take care of you. Don't worry about your, don't take worries into your head. Let me worry for you. If I cannot take care of you, God will take care of you. But do not worry. Come back much stronger. When you are coming back, do a lot of research in the meantime. Do a lot of reading. See how you can really be a better person. When you come back to work, see how better you can contribute to the company. So use your time and stay with your family. Take care of your health. And like I said, the last piece of my research at this moment is hope. What we have done in the last 1 month is we have, just to keep everybody's motivation really, really up, we have already put on 3 new projects on the fast track, so that, not only we can show to our people that you guys are safe as far as your work is concerned, but we will also be hiring new people. These are not necessarily very big projects that we are setting up, but they're very labor intensive kind of projects that we are going to get into. So this kind of this is like to keep them well. I know the world will be a different place after the COVID is over, but I strongly believe, there will be new opportunities. We will find new ways to do business, and I'm not looking too deep into all those problems as yet. I'm being very positive. I'm staying very relaxed myself. I talk to all my people, I send them out video messages, trying to keep them calm. And I think we will do well. And if you talk about the result, Bangladesh should be out of lockdown by around the 5th of this month. And I tell you, I have 14,000 people working for Anwar Group, and not a single person is inshallah coming back sick. So you can tell that my resources are being put to the best possible use that we could, yes, and other things, this is really not the time for me to think about anything else other than my people at this moment.
Thank you. So yet again, I think wherein Dr. Krenshak spoke about it, how we are all going to be, it is like the way we say America first or the nation first, and here we are saying that yes, our people first, and you're doing every bit or whatever needs to be done to make sure that, when you talk about hope, you're also talking about coupling up with a lot of resources. As you said, you have projects that are coming up. So people are kind of looking forward to it. So we're just not talking about survival, but you're continuing to work alongside for some revival as well.
I have 14,000 people really motivated to come back stronger into their work.
Come back with vengeance, I guess.
Come back with vengeance. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Hussain. Thank you so much. And with that, let me bring on a lovely, beautiful panelist who is here with us, Miss Shaina Ganpati. Ma'am, it was wonderful speaking to you yesterday. But before I put forth my question to you, I did hear you speak so much about outreach and, the ways you are actually going out to touch people's life and economies, how you are, the public and the private sector, the way the collaboration is happening. If you could just, enlighten a little more on that before I come to the question with you.
Okay, so thanks for having me. MCC Group is a real estate developer headquartered in Bangalore. We have a presence all over India, and of course, one of the very interesting aspects of our community outreach has been how we collaborate with our clients and our partners and the government. And as I mentioned to you earlier, it's a very unique model. We are one of the largest, providers of office spaces to the multinational companies that are housed in India today. And we created a product called the Corporate Connect program with a simple objective. We felt that instead of working in silos in CSR, can we come together and sort of pool in our resources and make a larger impact. And Corporate Connect has been a very successful program in the last 3 years. And given our long and deep relationships that we currently have with our tenants in our tech parks around India, when the COVID pandemic lockdown started, one of the first places that we turned to in order to sort of, look at how can we pool in our resources and our efforts was to our, the tenants and the occupiers of our IT parks. We also looked at, we made a charter. We said, look, these seemed like food and taking care of the people up in the front line seemed to be a very, very critical requirement. Can we do something together? That was one conversation we had. As a company, we've had a very, strong history of giving back to the city that we operate in and around the communities where we build our projects. So we actually reached out to the Chief Minister and the head of the traffic police and the head of education department, which is a core of our CSR. And we said, look, what can we as a company do? And we have the strength of, all these corporates alongside us. What can we do collaboratively to contain and help you contain, the pandemic and the way things were, panning out, in the last few weeks. And surprisingly, all our employees actually came forward and within, 48 hours raised about 75 lakhs as their contribution to, any response that we needed to do for COVID. Internally as a company, we set up a COVID response team that would be like a centralized cell for our customers. So we, how do we respond to them? How do we ensure that, communication was so important? And we also set up a COVID relief team. So across all verticals, we knew we had strengths to sort of internally leverage. So we set up a COVID relief team, which involved some of the senior-most, members of our facility management arm, our core corporate team, our CSR teams across different verticals and cities, and we were able to, respond very quickly. So it was one central sort of cell where all requests started to come into, and my team and I would review all these requests, and we were able to turn things around. For example, across India today, in Noida, Mumbai, Pune, and Bangalore and Chennai, we have set up hydration points for all the police that are serving in the front lines. And this happened overnight, and it could only happen because of the way in which we responded to the problem, and of course the professionally managed facility management teams that are operating across the cities. So since the lockdown in India, all the policemen in the regions where our tech parks are able to get into these hydration tents. They're able to get some basic access to toilet. They get coffee, tea, and water, and first aid, sanitizers, and even food sometimes. So that was fantastic. We've also, tied up with the police across these cities and made sure that they have masks, sanitizers, and protein, energy, nutrition bars, just to sustain them through the day. So I think the most exciting part for us was to leverage our teams in all these cities, and look at how well we work with the government. So Bangalore became like a template for the rest of the cities, and we were able to roll this out. Food became a huge issue, as you know, and some of you may have noticed in India, a lot of migrant laborers were stuck without food.
Yes, that is what I was going to ask you, that as a real estate developer, I mean, this particular industry does, house a lot of migrant workers. So what is the initiative that you're doing towards them?
We did three things or four things really. So first we looked at our construction workers and those that are housed in camps that were within our tech parks. We worked very closely with our civil contractors to ensure that all required, daily needs were provided to them, and safety measures and the sanitization and all of that was met. That was the first piece. The second piece is under CSR, we take care of government schools. That's where our focus is. So we managed to, we worked with a fantastic organization called Akshay Patra, who gave us ration boxes, enough for 42 meals for a family. So we reached out to families of government schools that we support, and we ensured that each family member got a box of ration. We also across the city, looked at migrant workers and pockets of below income, level families that were there. And there we worked with the government and some of our partners who are already in these areas to identify and distribute cooked food in some cases and ration in some cases. So about close to 3 lakh meals have been actually distributed in a very short span of time. And we're now looking at hopefully doing a second round. And all this money came from the money that our employees actually contributed for the COVID relief measures. So of course, taking care of our residential clients who are stuck inside the homes that we construct, our tenants who are also anxious about what is it going to be, when we ever get back to work, has been a major concern for us. So as I said earlier, we've set up
a whole lot of anxiousness and a whole lot of anxiety together has kind of enveloped all of us.
Yes, and I can tell you, I mean, very early in our journey at Embassy, we set up a professional facility management arm, and we see the value of a professionally, trained team that is they're able to respond so quickly. They have the systems and protocols in place to roll out, and respond to a situation like this. So across India, all our properties are sanitized daily. They are absolutely ready to take back people when they come into work. All our residential projects are innovating the way they manage the whole cleanliness and maintenance. The communication lines are open. And also as a company, we've revisited how we need to design these buildings going forward, whether it's the entry and exit points, how will deliveries take place in the future. Each project of ours, is it connected to a hospital nearby? Is there a response team that can come in? And also through digital media, thank God for communication that's possible. We've been able to keep in touch with our tenants and residents over the last few weeks, trying to engage with them at various levels, making sure that their mental well-being, they're heard. If there's someone in trouble, we are responding to that. It's been a fantastic, example of how different verticals have actually come together to respond and support, in business continuity.
Wow.
Having said that, there's so much ambiguity, as the rest of us have pointed out. I know that we have.
I guess we all live in that book world, no?
Yeah, we have to continue to think on our feet. We have to be innovative in the way we manage this. It's not going to be easy. It's never going to be the same again.
And more important, that result oriented. I mean, the kind of initiatives that you're talking about,
Yes.
of putting everything together, I think it has just happened in the last 40 days. I mean, you had your network, you had your resources, but really making them result oriented is what counts at the end of the day.
That's
And while there could be few who are still talking about doing the good work, and you have, you've been pioneers into it. So, talking about pioneers, I need to understand from you. You are the pioneers when it comes to the real estate investment rush. So, how do you think it is all going to shape up the industry, which is what I need to understand.
Business continuity is going to be a concern for every industry. And I think as a developer, we understand it. We are on the ground. We see the realities, and we also see the challenges that this present situation has thrown up. So I think first of all, to be aware of what's coming, to have a sense of a plan to ensure that our customers, our employees, as Mr. Hussain was pointing out, I think the safety of our employees is paramount. I think we're going to have to do everything we can to give them the sense of security, the sense of safety and well-being when they return to work, whether it's our clientele in our tech parks or the residents of our homes or the employees that come back. And I can tell you that it's going to be something that we all will collectively have to face. And in a way, this has brought us all together, to face greater challenges, I guess. Sangeeta, are you there? Yeah. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Now I can. Yeah. Now I can. Sorry, you may have to repeat what you said. I couldn't hear you earlier.
No. You can continue because it's all right. We were still online, so you can continue. No problems. It's just my net went. So yeah.
Okay. So as I was saying, that I think collectively we need to face these challenges. Be realistic about our expectations from different parts of the industry, and be creative, be innovative, and also be brave. I think that's important for us as we face the challenges.
I think you have to be integrated with each other.
Yes.
And also, you spoke about your program, Corporate Connect. While you have these corporates who are lending out, who are actually, very much there, but need to understand how much it has become a part of their conscience rather than just as a CSR activity. Do you think they are more responsive towards now?
I think every corporate that I've spoken to in the last few weeks is already doing something meaningful. The reason I say this is because I've had several conversations across the board to check on each other, to sort of leverage off each other's connections, support each other with vendors, or providing the rates, or pointing them in the right direction. For example, ventilators is a good example. There were so many of us thinking together, saying that what kind of ventilators can we give the government, where do we source the right kind of ventilators. When it came to a simple thing like a mask, it was quite a challenge even to find
I suggest somebody take over and just carry on.
We've lost China.
Sure, some of us will have to leave in a little while. So I suggest that you take over and just carry on. You can come back to it again.
So do we get off now?
Both.
Do we get off now? We lost both China and Sangeeta.
Hanji, Manvar sir, we still have Manju's inputs. So we'll stay for a few more minutes. You're presenting a large real estate company.
Let's request him to speak.
Share your comments on.
Let's request him to speak so that we can all then leave after that. So just request him to speak, please. Yeah, Rajat, okay.
You're back.
I'm sorry, I think it's my internet that's really kind of give me a lot of trouble right now.
Yeah, Sangeeta, if we can start with Manjunath sir.
Right, sir. Yes, I'll do that.
So, from the group who's not.
Right, so I'd like to speak to Mr. Manjunath here, who's so, sir, my question to you will be that, how's your group dealing with the lockdown and its impact on customer mindset? How are you actually re-strategizing your internal activities across departments like sales, marketing, HR, and operations?
As far as the group is concerned, we are an infrastructure group as well as the real estate, and also we do have a group of hospital with us. We have a backward integration in terms of the construction. And you see, once the COVID happened, rather, before the COVID itself, in wherever the infrastructure projects which are there we provide food and shelter for all the laborers. We have direct employees somewhere in the range of about 5,000 to 6,000 people. And then the indirect labor would be in the range of, say, about 10,000. So this is the number. And if you see, what we have done is that approximately around 80% of the labor is retained in the camp. That is because the facilities which we have provided over there for them, and whatever the food, medical facility, everything has been given over there, and that's how we have retained. Now, recently, about 2 weeks back, we have started all our infrastructure projects, which are the government projects, all those projects which we have started. Except in the real estate, we could not start till the lockdown. Even under the real estate, we do a backward integration where we have labor camps. Labor is with us. So whatever Shaina was telling, exactly the things which we have taken care. And each of the site is connected to a hospital, to an ambulance, to any sort of emergency or any facility which is required for the labor is taken care. And that's how, if you see all our labor camps are maintained with great, rather neatness, and, we don't have any issues over there till now. So this is how we are taking care of our employees as well as the laborers who are going to work with us for the project. In fact, what Sangeeta is asking about our future, this thing for our staff and the other this thing, I would like to touch base that first. So whatever the officers which are there, what we are trying to do is that 100% fumigation, whatever we need to do, and whatever as per the directions given in the recent meeting of our CREDAI. So we had called a doctor, and he has given certain methodology how exactly we need to function in the office, what are all the facilities which we need to give, and how is the social distancing which we need to do. And all those parameters have been kept in mind, and we have kept all our offices, all our sites, everything is ready. If we say that we have to start tomorrow, we are in a position to start the work. With regard to the customers whom we have, See, so far so good that we are in touch with all the customers on a regular basis. In fact, what I am doing is that to keep all the sales team, marketing team, construction team, and the other teams to be always engaged on a weekly basis. Definitely, I'm with them. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to have this thing. What are all the aspects which we have to do with the customers? We are doing it, and we are calling them. And most of the places, we are on a better footing. We don't have any issues with the customers, and the customers are happy the service which we are providing. Even in a completed project where the residents are staying, we are taking care of them to the core. Whatever the requirement, our facility people, our facility management people, they will be there, and they'll be to their service to do X, Y, Z. And even the visitors who are coming up to the flat, anybody is coming also, that is checked, and then we are sending them inside. And also, whatever the basic material, basic items which are required for the living, all those things we are trying to provide for all the apartment complexes at a walkable distance or within the compound, so that there is no issue of any of the spreading of this COVID, or people feeling that they don't have any of the items in their house and things like that. So this is how we are taking care of all the customers. We are taking care of the booker customers also. We have to talk, because the thing is that they are going to be, it's an unfinished project. So they are also comfortable. We are not putting any pressure on them for whatever the payments, and things like that. And things are moving. And all our contractors also, wherever we have given contracts, subcontracts. So they are also...
Actually addressing your team. You said every Friday you try to connect with your team members or with your customers, and you're engaging with them. What is that biggest worry that everybody has on their mind in terms of, is it right now in the lockdown, or is it something much after the lockdown? What is that one thing that continuously keeps worrying them?
See, keeps worrying them is the after the lockdown effect. See, the basic thing is that as far as the organization is concerned, as their job is concerned, there is no problem. Everybody is protected. There is no issue at all. But what happens is that whatever the sales which we have done, whatever the construction which we need to do, and with whatever the little bit setback what we have with COVID, say for example, we were working in each project, there will be somewhere in the range of about 800 to 900 laborers working. So in such project, to have the social distancing, what exactly we need to do? Whether we will be able to do it in the same pace, whether can we take up the project in that, so can we complete it? We have some schedules, we have some timelines. So those are all some of the things which are bothering them. And of course, what has happened is that in the last few months, whatever the new customers who are there, so those customers, they are not coming in because they cannot see the site unless and until we are mainly a residential player. So what happens is that unless and until the customer comes and visits the project, he cannot book the flat. So naturally what happens there, some sort of issues are there. So they are worried about that. We have to pump in the confidence in them that nothing will happen. And that is why what we are doing is that in the media, in the digital media, time and again, we are giving all sorts of communications to the customer. In turn, it goes into our sales people. So about this social distancing, how exactly we need to handle, all those things it will come out.
And the safety and hygiene norms, basically.
Yeah, we are all putting all those things in the ad itself. Stay home, stay safe. So what exactly we need to do? So those are all some of the things which we are doing, and we are increasing the presence in the digital media so that the customer also should not feel what is happening to the organization. So that's how we are taking care.
So socially, we may be disconnected, but it's very important that we still keep engaging. And I think we are very lucky that in this particular, era, we have an alternative available to us, and we should put it to its best. We should really make the best out of it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And, as we've been talking about businesses with their resources doing collective good, we've been hearing from our panelists that they've already started doing this, and rather they were much before prepared for all of this, not because from the pandemic point of view, but it's very necessary that the social and purpose has to be added while we really go out to make greater businesses. It's important that we look inward, we work inwards to make that change of greater environment. And we've been hearing it from Manjunath sir. So thank you so much, and all the best for that particular initiative. You've been doing commendable. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And with that, again, I'm going to go back to to Dr. Batra. Dr. Batra, I've been waiting again to speak to you. So I need to understand from you that, what are the fundamental advancements, can your industry make to avoid or maybe better respond to pandemics in the future so as to minimize the human impact?
I think there's going to be a lot of change post-COVID in the healthcare industry and the wellness industry. The first thing I think is that the realization that we've had now after this is that health and economy are so closely related, which was not there earlier perhaps. I mean, you can see how health can actually cripple an economy. So more focus on health, whether it's the health of your own workers, whether it's the health of your own staff, your own company, your people, or your society at large. There is going to be a much larger spend of GDP. Like, for example, India has 1% spend of GDP. And the preparedness to deal with any other epidemic like this or any other major catastrophe that may come in the future, that awareness is already set in. And I think there's already now a move to do that. So the first thing is to understand that it's not just money that is concerned, everything. I mean, you can't buy good health with money, and health and economy are very interrelated, and this COVID has actually taught us that, and therefore there's a move now to move from sickness to health. So all our
people understand this terminology a little more better in terms of when you say immunity and resistance.
Yeah, I'll come to that a little later. I was just trying to tell you that the change that's going to happen is that people are going to now move from dealing with sickness versus dealing with health. So, for example, today all your treatments, cures, everything is related towards treatment. Okay, but we should actually have all medical, direction going towards prevention. So prevention will become the buzzword. How to take care of your people through prevention. Why is it that we need to fall sick and then go to hospital and then get reimbursement from insurance? Why does the insurance company not pay people to stay healthy? Why don't already have a premium when there's when you don't no claim premium? So that should be extended. So I think the focus on health and fitness is what's going to come, and that's one big change that's going to happen now. The second thing is that there's going to be a lot of focus from immunosuppression drugs into immunity building drugs. So today there are a lot of medications, for example, which are used, which actually cause, sometimes I would say that, the cure is worse than the problem, than the disease. And there are so many side effects. So now the world is going to move into more and more safer remedies. And therefore alternative medicines like Ayurveda, yoga, homeopathy are now going to come to the forefront. What will have to be done, of course, is a lot of technical work to be done. You spend a lot of billions of dollars is spent today in getting a kind of a drug molecule, and all that it needs to be done is to make sure that, clinical trials are done for homeopathic medicines, for Ayurvedic medicines, so that in future this can be used. So I think there's going to be a bigger movement towards safer medication at all, as well as we are going forward. Also, there's going to be a lot of spend on R&D, much more than normal. We are not prepared even with vaccines. It takes 2 years to get one. So I think there's going to be a lot of research and development that's going to happen over here. So I think basically people are going to be in the center of well-being, and people's well-being is going to be very important. And I think we're going to give more importance to personal health and hygiene as compared to what we've ever done before.
There'll be a shift in terms of a shift of focus from the modern medicine to now alternative medicines. And we've started to experience that, I guess.
Yeah, that's already happening all over the world. And, homeopathy is now the second largest system of medicine in the world, according to WHO, World Health Organization.
So do you think the world is going to look towards India for this somewhere?
It already is. I mean, it already is. You already have World Yoga Day. You have yoga now,
yes.
Very popular. Ayurveda is getting more and more popular. Homeopathy is already popular. So I think all over the world, people are going to look at India. Also, let me tell you that India has got the largest number of alternative health homeopathic doctors in the world. I mean, we have 100,000 practicing homeopathic doctors in India, which is the largest in the world. We have more than 135 university-based medical colleges which teach homeopathy, for example. So whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, whether it's treatment, the world is going to look to India. And this is an opportunity that India has to then develop and to grow.
Thank you, Dr. Batra. Thank you so much for your inputs. And with that, let me once again speak to Dr. Kringshak here. And sir, I need to understand from you, as the chairman of the Success Group of Companies Thailand, how are you contributing to the society in the current trying times?
Let me divide this into two levels. One is indirect.
So if you could again place your camera, we're not able to see you properly.
Can you see me?
Yes, sir.
I would like to divide into two portions. One is indirect help in contribution, and second is direct. So let me talk about indirect contribution from our group of our companies and our organization and our people that are with us. One, we have maintained the payroll for everybody. We don't get rid of workers despite the economic downturn and the COVID situation that has created a huge problem economically for almost every single companies in the world, in our country. So we have maintained the policy of not firing anybody. That means we keep all the people no matter what. And even if they have nothing to do, we make sure that they are using their time wisely to train themselves properly for the post-COVID, but we don't fire them. We may try to reassign some work that will make them fit with the situation where certain kind of work, there's no work to do in this period when the whole thing is closed down and the lockdown is happening. Therefore, we make sure that they are reallocated the different kind of works, they are trained properly, and so on. So we try to create new business model to work with the COVID situation so that some income generating can happen so that they are not that badly affected. Those who are dependent on the sort of work that require commission and things like that when they don't have nothing to do in that light. So that's the point number one in terms of that. Two, we try to make sure that our people are not being infected with COVID and not the spreader of COVID. That means we try to be socially responsible so that from day one, we make sure that our furniture are being cleaned properly, our offices are cleaned properly, all the provision of the mask, the alcohol gel to cover, to wash their hands properly. We make sure that the lift in our building are carefully sanitized. Our toilets are sanitized properly. We make sure that the people who clean the building are doing it in the light of the COVID situation much more than usual. That means it's not just vague cleanliness, but it has to be hygienic and protecting people. We allow our people to work from home.
Thank you, Dr. Kringshak. Thank you so much. All the possible efforts are being taken so that we can really have, as once we open the lockdown and everybody gets back to work, we're all prepared for it. And while they are in lockdown, all the care has been taken from the government. So thank you so much for highlighting that for us. And with that, I'll quickly bring in Mr. Hussain Safran because of paucity of time, and I think the internet connections are also going a little haywire today. So very quickly, let me speak to Mr. Hussain. Sir, I need to understand, in the current scenario, how do you think the businesses are actually going to cooperate by the existing means, what they have today, the resources that they have towards a collective good?
Sorry, you're breaking, Sangeeta.
Sir, I'm saying that in the current scenario, how do you think that business houses can actually contribute by the means of their existing resources towards collective good? One particular point that you could kind of elaborate.
Let's see, if I understood you correctly, if I talk about Bangladesh in particular, we kind of have grown up, growing up in Bangladesh, we have kind of grown up in with natural calamities, and not only corporates, but even individuals. Whenever we have these situations, the typhoons, the floods, the cyclones, not only corporates, but individuals also, like come to stand by the affected people. So this is kind of like there in our DNA, in the DNA of Bangladesh, is to take up their social responsibilities. And collectively, I do not know, like I'd like to help people from wherever I stand at this moment. Whoever needs help, I'd like to reach out to them. Though there are a lot of collective, funds that are being raised, but most important is we have a very unique system in Bangladesh of going to the Prime Minister's resources. So if it comes to contributing with money, we usually go with the Prime Minister's fund, and she really has a very well and strong setup that can reach people, the needy people, much quicker than probably I can reach. And during coronavirus, like we are all locked down, so we are really looking towards the to the Prime Minister's Relief Fund to come to people's aid. Was that your question? I didn't really know if that was your question or not.
Sangeeta, you unmute.
Hello.
You are muted, Sangeeta.
Yes. I said you very much answered my question. Thank you so much for that. And with that, I'd like to speak to Mr. Manjunath once again, sir. As you said that you've been doing a lot of engagements out there with your customers, with your employees. I need to understand if there are any particular special activities or drives to sustain the social fabric, that you're going to adapt to or you're going to implement. So if you can just unmute your mic.
Thank you. Okay. You see, what happens is that what we are working out is that now the next thing is that online booking is one of the very important thing which may work out now. And then, the digitalized virtual tour for the customers we are trying to work out. We are putting up, emphasizing more on towards that. So by virtue of it, what happens is that the customer need not come to site. I know that, when he is buying a product of somewhere around 1 crore or 80 lakhs to 2 crores and things like that, naturally he would like to visit this thing, but we are trying to work out the virtual mode of, visiting the site. And then we are giving them the online booking facility. And also, what we are trying to work out is that we are bringing in the system within the organization, within the site offices, and so that the perfect social distancing is maintained, and the customer is rest assured that he's not having any problem by visiting to us or dealing with us or meeting with our people. So these are all some of the things which we are working out, and we are looking to take it forward in that direction. So that is how we are taking up the preventive measures and to seek the support and the cooperation from the customers. Did I answer you?
Yes, absolutely. So, and I must say that, with the Asia One platform, it is wonderful that you're actually reaching out to the entire Asia One family in the virtual world. We have, almost 2 million subscribers out there. And it is amazing that, people are watching you and actually understanding and getting to know the kind of initiatives that you have implemented and you've taken. So thank you so much. Thank you for it. And my, my last question to Shaina ma'am, very quickly, ma'am, I know that you're into that retail and education space. So how do you think you're going to be using all this to contribute to the welfare of the society these days, particularly with education and retail?
So let me address education, and that's been our forte in CSR. To add to everything Manjunath said, we need to really think about how to reinvent teaching virtually. And we are dealing with the strata of the society which is the weakest. We support government schools, and we were very fortunate that till the end of the academic year we were rolling out healthcare initiatives in all of these schools, teaching children the importance of hand wash, how to use water well, nutrition, and all of that. we ensured that every child had been tested and treated to a large extent. So over 133 schools is where we had reached out to. And as we are sitting at home figuring out what next for the next year, I know it's going to be challenging, but I think the key here is how do we use digital technology and use innovation to reach the children in a safe manner, without allowing for any kind of risk to be a part of that whole process, and find meaningful ways to engage not only the children but the teachers and families. So one of the key things that we've done in the last few weeks is keep in touch with these families. So we have phone numbers, so we've been talking to the parents, we've been talking to the children.
Reaching out to them.
Yeah, just to keep in touch with them. And as far as employees are concerned, I think when you talk about retail or be it employees, I think be supportive of and be flexible about being able to work from home. Some companies do it naturally as part of the process, but companies like us, we need to then probably move to being a little more flexible and understanding about how can we make this all work, whether it's work from home or work from the office. How to be clever about productivity is something that I think we should look at. Technology is another one. We have to ensure that all our buildings, access to these buildings, contact-free lifts, for example, sanitization, dispensers, which is automatic, the use of masks and protective gear, to be responsible when we use it. So communicating this continuously.
A lot of awareness that you're trying to create.
Yeah, and I think we can do it very well with technology.
Well equipped with the technology and of course all the other resources.
Yeah, and reinforce it. Yeah.
Thank you, Shaina. Thank you. And with that, yes, I'd like to request Mr. Rajat Shukla sir to conclude this webinar for all of us here. We've got great insights, great minds here who spoke and deliberated on the topic. So I request you to conclude the webinar, and then I have a question from our attendee which I'm going to put forth. So I guess I think I've lost Mr. Rajat Shukla on the network. So let me, Dr. Batra, one question to you. What really needs to be kept in our minds after the lockdown? Something that you advise, something that we need to be more conscious about?
Can I interrupt for a minute, Sangeeta?
While in the lockdown, right, sir?
Can I interrupt for 1 minute, please?
Yes.
Yeah, I have to go for my prayers, so if I can take leave, please.
Please, thank you so much, Mr.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Very much.
Please pray for all our good health and
I will.
Thank you, sir. Yes. So Dr. Batra, going back to you. What do you think has to be more brought into our conscience after the lockdown?
So there's only one thing, and that is the realization that health has to be self-governed. So we have to govern ourselves, and discipline in health is very important. You can't, lose weight if you don't diet properly, if you don't exercise. So discipline is very important. So post-COVID, right now we are in the boundaries of our own homes. When we get out, we have to make sure that we have a social responsibility as well. So we have a personal responsibility, and we also have a societal responsibility. And we have to carry this responsibility forward. So when we go forward, we have to make sure that we keep physical distancing. I don't call it social distancing, but physical distancing. We have to have basic, hygiene. We can't spit on the road. We must wear masks, and so on and so forth. So I think we have to take care of ourselves and take care of everybody around us.
And Dr. Batra, you did speak about this medicine, which is very good to build our immunity. And I would want you to once again say it on the forum for us, sir.
So that's a medicine that has been recommended by Ayush, which is the Ministry of Alternative Health. And that is Arsenic Album 30, 1 dose for 3 consecutive days to build up immunity, and to be repeated again after a month if required.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we've got Rajat sir back with us. So, and before I get Rajat sir, Dr. Batra, there is a question, and I need to understand from your perspective that, do you actually see COVID-related efforts to be officially declared as a recognized CSR, or will the companies have to expense until further clarifications? Currently, only donations to PM Care counts for government directive.
I think it should happen because there's such a collective effort towards it, and at some stage, I think the government has to recognize it.
Thank you. And let me conclude it by getting Rajat sir back again on the panel. So, sir, final words coming in from you for all our panelists, and of course for this wonderful topic that we very well elaborated and deliberated on.
Thank you, Sangeeta. It's been a pleasure and privilege to listen to all the speakers today. And I think all of us, are domain experts in our own industries. And I think these inputs are going to be relevant to multiple audiences. And pleasure to have all the speakers today. And let's hope, for a good, fortunate time post-COVID. And let's see this entire time to reset and revisionize our own businesses and industries. Hope it helps and brings out a better tomorrow.
Thank you. We surely have a better tomorrow, a better environment, a better economy, and yes, better lives. So with that, a big thank you to all our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us. It was amazing that you really, spend your very wonderful and very precious time with us. Thank you, all of you. And with that, a big thank you to all our friends in the virtual world. Stay tuned with Web Talk series, and we promise you we bring more from this space. Thank you all of you for this, all the love, all the support towards the Asia One family. Thank you all of you. It was a pleasure, moderating this amazing session for everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And have a wonderful
Thank you.
day.